kick it off with the Giants, whose offense was absolutely terrible outside of Evan Engram last year, between Eli Manning having some terrible games, the running game never getting it together, and injuries in the receiving core. They're hoping for a much better 2018 here. They did bring in Saquon Barkley. Odell Beckham is healthy. Sterling Shepard is coming off of a kind of a mini breakout season in his sophomore year. Let's kick it off with the Giants here. What do we think of Eli Manning coming into a situation where it may be his last year with the Giants?
I actually like it. When I first did my rankings, he was mid to low 20s. And then when I was doing my stat breakdowns and everything else, because I spent way too much time on this team, I actually bumped him up to my mid-teens. He's my QB 16. He had the most drops from his receivers last year at 50, but without Odell, and Shepard was really banged up, I think, for most of the mid part of that season. I'm not surprised there, but he's gonna get Odell. We just mentioned, he's got Ingram, he's got Shepard. He has probably the most balanced team he's seen since 2012, with Barkley now being the clear-cut RB1 there. So there's a lot to like in Manning as a mid-streamer, but that's pretty much all he's going to be.
Chris?
Yep, he's one of my favorite buys in Superflex, actually. He's a little bit more expensive now after the draft, after they added Saquon and they added a couple linemen and stuff like that, but Eli still has that stigma. He just throws a lot of interceptions, just not very good anymore. But just based on pure passing volume in that offense and the weapons around him, I sent many, many late seconds this offseason to acquire him in Superflex leagues. I have him probably pretty similar to what he just said, at around 16 this year. I think that's a good spot.
So I'm a little lower. I've got him in the 20s, but that's because that even when Eli has some great weapons around him, he's just crazy inconsistent and will screw you some weeks. Whereas a lot of the guys I have in front of him are guys, it's like these guys could potentially even finish as back end ones, where I don't see Manning doing that even with some really good weapons. So I've got him in the tier below, kind of that second or that flex tier, which is anywhere from like 10 to 23.
Which is why you wait. This is why you wait to draft quarterbacks this year.
Now, in best ball formats, I love Eli Manning this season.
I have him in 2 best ball formats. Hey, I'm back. Did we do a beer review already?
No, that will be after this team.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to add anything else on Eli Manning besides that you have him best ball?
No, I think that Barkley actually kind of hurts Eli's upside. I don't think that he's going to have the 600 pass attempts or close to 4,500 yards that he's had in previous years. I do think that he's probably a viable streamer, and like you said, in best ball, just because he does have weapons around him. But I think Saquon Barkley is what this team is going to run through. So I'm like you, though, with the Giants. You mentioned it as soon as I walked back in the room, and I want to buy into them every year, and I tell myself every year, wow, look at these weapons. They're going to be good, and then they never are. So, well,
let's transition to the running back then and talk about Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Stewart, and Wayne Gallman making up the top 3 running backs here. Besides Barkley, where do you guys project him at in terms of your redraft running back rankings?
Right now, he's my RB6. Right now, he's 107 ADP, which I think is fair. Sky's the limit when it comes to carries. I don't see Jonathan Stewart or Wayne Gallman or fucking Joe Schmo on the streets going to take anything away from there. So he should, I'm guessing, get around 250, if not more. It's where the passing game it's where the passing stat line, I think, becomes a little more difficult to project. So I spent a little bit too much time in trying to deep dive this, just trying to figure out where his stat line would be. I fell on a 70 targets, 55 receptions, 423 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And how I got there was just kind of, averaging out the last 3 seasons for all the receiving work from the running backs. I went back and looked at Ahmad Bradshaw, which was the last 1,000-yard rusher for the Giants in 2012, and also the last Giants running back to get 250-plus carries, which he did in 2010. So there's a lot of upside. Obviously, there's a lot of upside for Barkley there.
See, I went a different philosophy when I projected him out. I'm similar in targets and receptions, but I had his yards per reception pegged a little bit higher.
Yes.
So I have him with a bit more yards, and I went and looked at Shula and Shermer and what they did.
Yes.
And I looked at the coaching staff that's there and the schemes that were there, and I went back and looked at Jonathan Stewart's carries and Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray last year, and the type of quarterback, and dug into some other things to project that. So I had him about 100 yards more
I wouldn't be
But-
shocked at all.
But that was
either.
based on yards per reception being higher than finding ways to get him into the open field and the fact that they added offensive line help in New York. So
And this is why I also like Eli Manning, because you'll get a running back involved, and when you had Vereen and healthy, he was a
I
top
was
10
just
QB.
about to say that exact same thing. Off the top of my head, I don't do as much work as you guys do. You guys get in there really deep, but I just wrote down 60 receptions when we started this thing. So I'm right there with you guys. I think he's right there. Saquon, that is. And obviously that helps him a lot, but I think that does wonders for Eli Manning. Lots of safety valve throws and Saquon making people miss, probably getting 4 or 5 reception touchdowns.
All right. And then Stewart
Yeah.
and Gallman are strictly injury handcuffs for Barkley.
Stewart's going to be the change of pace guy. I got him for about 115-ish touches. And then Gallman is, if there's an injury, he'll get receiving down work. And other than that, I don't see him doing a whole lot.
So if no injuries, he's probably in the 50 touch range.
I made one note on Wayne Gallman. I do agree. I think they're both dead. There's no reason to draft Jonathan Stewart. There's no reason to draft Wayne Gallman. The one knock that people may have on Barkley, and by knock I mean by very minimal, is that he's a little bit inconsistent with his pass blocking. This is where something Gallman did okay at last year. So if there's any chance that Gallman has any sort of relevancy, is maybe getting some third down work. But again, not really concerned with it. So
All right, enough time on Gallman. Let's move on to the outside wide receivers. Odell Beckham holding it down there as the main guy. Then you also have Cody Latimer, Roger Lewis, and Travis Rudolph is kind of the 2, 3, 4 for the outside positions. So there is some talk of Shepard taking some of those outside snaps as well. Where do you guys project Beckham at, and is anyone else interesting in that list?
So Beckham's my 3. Right now his ADP is 109, which I think is fantastic. It could be one of the better values in the first round if there's any. Barkley will not hurt Odell Beckham. I've seen that tweet come around a lot. People thinking that Barkley is going to hurt Odell. It's going to help him. It's going to stretch. It's going to open up more down the field. For all around, it's going to help everything out. There is some potential injury risk here. He's only played one 16-game season. He came into his rookie year hurt last year. But his projected, his overall stats, he's at his first 3 seasons, 152 targets, 96 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 12 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is a walking wide receiver, one top 5 finish, and until he doesn't do it, I don't see how it's not going to happen again.
All right, anything to add there, Chris?
Nope, just that Odell is still my number 1 receiver in all of Dynasty. I know you guys are talking a little bit more redraft, but I play Dynasty only, so this is this is what I think about. The broken ankle last year doesn't scare me or anything like that. Nothing injury wise, and
I bumped into my 2, so I'm pretty close, but not quite there with you.
Oh well, I love Odell. I know. I was just gonna say I have Cody Latimer on a couple teams. He'll probably start some games just as the second wide receiver, but I don't project any fantasy relevance unless Odell gets hurt, and even then, targets will just funnel elsewhere to Shepard, Engram, and Barkley. So, I mean, I have him as a stash, but nothing special.
All right. Moving to kind of what we thought was going to be the slot guy, but we've started getting some rumblings he may play more outside this year, is Sterling Shepard. Going into his 3rd year here, what do we think about him? Because he's kind of always been in Odell's shadow.
I mean, it's going to be where he lands on the target totem pole. He's got to compete with Engram. I think he'll outdo Barkley, but that's still going to be a nuisance in terms of targets. He's one of the hardest, I think, to kind of peg on because, a lot of his volume, came because Odell was hurt. And then you go back and look at his rookie season, I think he had 95-ish targets, somewhere around there. He's always been a 70-plus catch rate. Or, 70-plus catch rate last year. I think it was in the low 60s in his rookie year. But I had him going about maybe 80 to 90 targets, 700 yards, and 4 to 6 touchdowns, depending on all the Giants do.
And in your rankings?
He is my wide receiver 42, and his ADP is 1003.
All right. I've actually got him at 38. I actually would take Shepard over Aguilar personally, and definitely would take him in the 10th round.
I think I have him one spot apart.
All right. Any additional thoughts there on Shepard for dynasty purposes, Chris?
For Dynasty, he's a hard sell for me. He's one of those, almost no upside players. He's not someone I like to have unless I'm just need someone to fill out a roster or a starting lineup spot. We see, deep lineups where you start 10 or 11 players, and then I have those kind of guys. But in a bunch of normal leagues, he's just not someone I'm interested in, and someone that still fetches a high price in Dynasty, first round picks for some odd reason. So I don't have any, but if I did, I would sell.
All right, so you view him as a sell there. I mean, I kind of agree with you. I like having him around on teams, but if I got deep enough at wide receiver, I'd gladly move him. Let's move on to Evan.
Sell.
Sell on Shepard?
Yes.
Okay. How about Evan Engram? We're going to hit him next.
What? Buy or sell?
Yeah, are you going to buy or sell Engram?
I'm selling Ingram actually more than I'm selling Shepard. Shepard I'd probably be closer to a buy on. I had no idea what we were talking about.
So Ingram saw 115 targets last year, finished as a top 5 tight end. I think that target volume is probably going down, so he is my tight end 6. I think you guys generally agree with me on that he is not a top 4 or 5 tight end.
He is my tight end 6 too.
And I also do not agree with him being the number 1 tight end in Dynasty that I've seen in a few places. So
No.
But who said number 1?
I don't necessarily want to name and shame, but I have
No,
seen
it's
it.
all right. I mean, I understand that's just egregious.
Yeah, it's nuts. And also, let's look at the fact that he was his PF grade was 42.2, 67th in the league among 67th among tight ends. He had a 55.7% catch rate, 31st among tight ends. Most drops at 13. And he wasn't very efficient with his production. He was negative 7.2, 19th among tight ends. He needs volume to be successful, and I think he'll get it, but he won't get it nearly to the point where he was last year.
Yeah, there's a fine line there because I love volume-based players because that's where fantasy points come from, in my opinion. So I do like Evan Engram, and he's still my 4th tight end in Dynasty. But that's more like because after the 4th tight end and, Hunter Henry, who's now gone for the year, there's nothing else. Like, the tight end landscape's not very good. So, I mean, he's still up there, but like you said, 115 targets is probably not repeatable. And if he doesn't shape up his efficiency, his numbers are going to drop by a lot.
I mean, I see a major target regression for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's down closer to 70 this season.
I had him at 87.
I think that's fair.
When I projected him out.
Completely fair.
I'm with you.
So even if he bumps the efficiency quite a bit, he would need to bump it. He'd need to become incredibly efficient to match his numbers from last year.
Yeah, and I think there's some slight touchdown regression too with Odell back because Odell's had one season where he hasn't pulled double-digit touchdowns, and it was when he got hurt last year.
Yeah,
so.
every other season, his average was 12, as we covered in a.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys talked about that already?
Yeah.
And Ingram had 6 touchdowns last
Welcome
year.
to the show,
yes, I agree.
me.